In time, you will learn to trust your feelings.
But he still has much to learn, Master. His abilities have made him, well, arrogant.
He's overly critical. He never listens. He doesn't understand.
Hello there. Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi obviously have a very complex and very difficult relationship when it comes to their position as master and apprentice. So today, I want to talk about their position as master and apprentice, their position as brothers, and of course, I want to talk about Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's training when it came around the time between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. So without further ado, here we go. But first, as always, a little bit of background. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker first originally met each other on the planet of Tatooine. After Qui-Gon Jinn escaped the battle between him and Darth Maul, the two of them were introduced to each other, and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker were immediately acquainted, but Obi-Wan Kenobi wasn't very fond of Anakin Skywalker to begin with. Immediately upon meeting Anakin Skywalker for the first time, Qui-Gon Jinn already knew that he was the chosen one. He already had the reflexes, he already had the ability to pod race, being the only human on Tatooine to be able to do it, and what certified his idea that Anakin was the chosen one was the highest midichlorian count of any individual Jedi throughout the entirety of the Jedi Order. This, along with the idea that Shmi Skywalker was pregnant by the Force, immediately gave him the idea that Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one and he would bring balance to the Force and immediately needed to be trained by any means necessary. Qui-Gon Jinn would then make it necessary to free Anakin Skywalker from slavery, and he would take him to Coruscant to the Jedi Temple so he could be tested for Force aptitude, since he already knew that he had a massive midichlorian count of well over 20,000, even eclipsing the midichlorian count of Yoda. But after a multitude of tests by the Jedi High Council, they declared that Anakin Skywalker was too old and that he would not be trained in the ways of the Force, and he would not be a Jedi. Qui-Gon, not accepting this fact as reality, decided to defy the Council and openly declare that he would take Anakin Skywalker as his Padawan learner, while his other Padawan learner, Obi-Wan Kenobi, would go through the Jedi trials and officially become a Jedi Knight. Unfortunately, however, this would not come to pass. As Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi fought against Darth Maul, Maul would eventually kill Qui-Gon Jinn, be killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi would fulfill Qui-Gon Jinn's dying wish and would take Anakin Skywalker on as his apprentice, even defying the Jedi Council and Yoda, and even saying that he would leave the Jedi Order to train Anakin Skywalker without the Council's approval. Unfortunately, during the start of Anakin's tutorship under Obi-Wan Kenobi, things were not going very good. Obi-Wan Kenobi wasn't really dedicated enough, nor was he wise enough to actually take on an apprentice of his own, and Anakin Skywalker actually needed a fatherly figure, not somebody who just took on a new apprentice just because he wanted to fulfill his master's last wish. But fortunately for Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, after the course of multiple years as master and apprentice, the two of them became more like brothers than they were actual father and son, or master and apprentice. The two of them went on multiple missions together over the course of 10 years, getting into a lot of trouble in a lot of different places, and it was very exciting for the both of them to take on these new adventures, especially considering all of the trials and tribulations that they had to go through to develop their relationship together. Now, of course, another individual that was responsible for playing Anakin Skywalker into the hands of the Sith and the dark side of the Force, and manipulating him against the Jedi Order would, of course, be Palpatine. Palpatine had been manipulating Anakin Skywalker during his Jedi training for quite literally the whole decade that he was being trained as a Jedi Knight, exploiting his fears and insecurities and his desire for power, playing on his strong connection to his loved ones such as Shmi and Padme Amidala, and subtly undermining the Jedi Order while presenting himself as a confidant and a source of understanding that the Jedi Order could not exactly provide. In a way, Palpatine kind of became a parental figure towards Anakin Skywalker that he desperately needed. He was basically the replacement for what Qui-Gon Jinn eventually would have been if Qui-Gon Jinn actually took him under his wing and didn't die by the hands of Darth Maul so many years beforehand. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't really see himself as really a father figure towards Anakin Skywalker, but just as a mentor and somebody to train him in the ways of the Force, but not exactly somebody he could actually rely on and depend upon for understanding and guidance when it came to learning how to use the Force and understanding the true aspects of the Jedi Order, where he went to Palpatine exclusively because Palpatine was basically riling him up, telling him that he would be one of the greatest Jedi to ever live, and he would be more powerful than Master Yoda one day. And as Palpatine had a very deep understanding of the Jedi Order, both from Darth Plagueis and by working with the Jedi Order for so many years, he could easily manipulate Anakin Skywalker into thinking that the rules were too rigid and that they were out of touch with the entirety of the galaxy, and that they were keeping Anakin away from accepting his true potential as one of the most powerful Jedi in the entirety of the Jedi Order. Which, in a very ironic and very suited sort of way, Palpatine was actually very right about the Jedi Order. They were very rigid, they were out of touch, and they didn't really play on actually protecting the individuals in the Republic itself, rather protecting the individuals within the actual confine of the Republic government and giving them all the support that they needed, while many individuals throughout the entirety of the Outer Rim were suffering and dying as slavery, drug trade, trafficking, and many other crimes were being committed out there, and people were literally dying while the Republic government were basically doing nothing. Another thing that made his training more difficult than it should have been was, of course, emotional trauma, because Anakin Skywalker had such a troubled childhood on Tatooine, and his strong emotional attachments towards his mother and Padme Amidala caused emotional conflict that would have interfered with his Jedi training, and obviously being called a slave in the Jedi Temple by many of your peers is not exactly a good way to make a first impression. But despite this emotional attachment and his emotional turmoil, Anakin Skywalker still showed potential as a Jedi Knight. He was mastering lightsaber combat very quickly, often acting impulsively due to his young age and troubled past. He was very well suited for using the Force. He was very natural at using many Force abilities, but Anakin Skywalker still struggled with the fundamental aspects of the Jedi Order and their philosophy, more focused on fighting and more focused on using the Force for action than actually, being a peacekeeper and not really settling with emotional attachments. Unfortunately, however, despite the fact that Anakin Skywalker had a true knack for lightsaber combat and he had a true knack for Force abilities, he was still only a Jedi Padawan learner during the beginning of the Clone Wars during the Battle of Geonosis. And eventually Anakin Skywalker would become a Jedi Knight of the Republic after he lost an arm to Count Dooku and the entirety of the Jedi Order was being ransacked and massacred by General Grievous, that literally required the entirety of the Jedi Order to build up more Jedi Knights to go out into the battlefield to fight against the Separatists and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. So basically, in a nutshell, Anakin Skywalker's training under the tutelage of Obi-Wan Kenobi, while somewhat efficient during the later time of life, was not very efficient during the first couple of years, considering all of Anakin Skywalker's emotional attachments and his rebellious nature. If he would have had somebody like, say, Qui-Gon Jinn to teach him the ways of the Force and the way to control his emotions, I'm sure he would have been a lot better off. Until the next video, I will see you guys later. Maybe it'll be next year, I have no idea.